This session is going to be covering increased effectiveness of key business tools with purpose-built Power Apps. It's going to be driven by Stephen Driggs, Solutions Architect, and Brandon Gorton, Principal Solutions Architect. First off, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. I mentioned before, this is being recorded and the recordings will be available after the event. All the attendees are going to be muted. So if you have any kind of questions, feel free to put them in the chat and respond to them in the chat. If you're having any kind of connection problems or difficulties, you can contact us at journeyteam.com/BTS support or throw something in the chat. At the end of the session, I'm going to be putting a short survey in the chat where you can enter to win some prizes that we're giving away each hour. You'll also receive an additional entry for a new Surface Laptop 4. So briefly, introduction to JourneyTEAM for those who might not know us. We simplify and effectively use technology to create a positive, lasting impact on the world. We've been doing this for almost 30 years now. We're over 120 members strong. We've been awarded Microsoft Partner of the Year 2 years in a row and have just been introduced to their inner circle. We work across the whole Microsoft stack. So whether it's CRM, ERP, cloud, we've got departments and expertise in the whole stack. So without further ado, I'll turn the time over to Stephen and Brandon.
Thanks, Chad, for the introduction. As Chad mentioned, my name is Stephen Driggs. I'm going to be presenting today, and Brandon Gorton's going to be kind of manning the chat. So as you have questions, feel free to throw those in there, and he'll interact with you there. Let me get my screen shared, and we'll dive into it. Okay, as mentioned, this is going to be focusing on today the effectiveness of using Power Apps to take the key business tools that you already use in your organization to the next level. I am Stephen Driggs, as mentioned prior. I like to put this little blurb together. I consider myself a Power Platform evangelist. Basically what that means is I'm a nerd and I love the Power Platform. I get really excited about it. My focus is on designing, developing, and implementing Power Platform solutions. And then Brandon Gorton's going to be, as I mentioned, manning the chat. He's a principal solution architect focused on kind of the similar things, but he focuses more on the Dynamics platform. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera just so we can focus on the presentation itself. Sure that's off. There we go. So first off, before I go into why we're going to embed Canvas apps, let me introduce the different types of apps in the Power Platform. You have model-driven apps, which are the apps that if you have Dynamics in your organization now that you use on a day-to-day basis, those are model-driven apps. And then there's Canvas apps, which are applications that you can build kind of from scratch. You can design the user interface. You can design the functioning and everything pretty well with a Canvas app. So today we're going to focus on Canvas apps, utilizing those and then embedding them into our other tools to take them to the next level. Here I like to kind of talk about why you should embed a Canvas app. Since Canvas apps are built upon a low-code platform, they pose an opportunity for your organizations to empower everyday users with a simplified way to develop applications and automations. These apps can be used to simplify the data entry process for your organizations, resulting in cleaner and more complete data. They can help you save time and effort by quickly accessing and modifying the data. As mentioned, they utilize the low-code platform, which can be used to create integrations between third-party systems without the need of hiring, expensive developers to write that complex code. And also, it can help provide visibility of data from third-party systems without having to store the data in your system. Before we start going into how to embed, we want to first mention the basics of accessing an app. So when you build an application, the first thing you have to start considering is how are other users going to access this? That's typically going to be you sharing your application. You can share applications directly with individual users, or you can share it with groups inside of Office 365 groups and things of that nature. When you share an app, you're going to want to first consider where you saved it, because you can save a Canvas app locally on your machine, or you can save it to the cloud. In order to share it, you're going to want to save it to the cloud, and then you're going to want to make sure that you publish your application. You can then choose who you want to share it with and what level of access they need. But consider, since Canvas apps are basically built on that low-code platform, the way that they connect to data is kind of unique. They use what are called connectors, which can connect to a wide variety of different data sources. And with that in mind, when you share an application with the user, you also want to consider the data sources inside of your application. When you share an application with the user, you're going to share the application itself, and you're going to share access to those data sources. So when doing so, you want to make sure you consider that, as I previously mentioned. A good example is, let's say I build a Canvas app that is built upon a SQL server. Well, first, when I share this with the user, I want to make sure that they can access the application, but I also want to consider if they can access that SQL server. So I would probably want to go in and double check, make sure that that user is invited to that server, has access, and can access the tables inside of that SQL server. I'll go ahead here now and show you quickly just how to share an app. I am in the make.powerapps portal here, and I'm just looking kind of inside of all of the solution components. I'm going to navigate over here to my apps. I'm going to click on the ellipse next to the app that I would like to share and click the share button. Then I'm going to search for the people or the group that I want to share the app with. In this scenario, we're going to do a test user. And then when I select on them, I can then give them access to the data source in the back end. Once I hit share, that user is going to get an email that says you have been invited to this application, and then they can start using the app. As mentioned, there's a couple of different permissions you want to consider. Here are the permissions of the application itself. You can give a user either the user level or the co-owner level. Co-owners allow the person to edit and share the app with others, but however, they cannot delete or change the app ownership. And a user can access the app, but can't do anything after that. They can't edit it, they can't share the app, they can just access it and use it. As mentioned prior, you want to also publish your application. The reason I mention this is anytime you're working with a Canvas app and you make changes to it and you click save, it's going to create a new version of your app. And this is done on purpose so that you can keep good track of version histories. And when you save your application, it will ask you, kind of for some version notes. But when you have these versions, only one can be published at a time. Power Apps will allow you to have up to 15 versions of your application, and they'll store those for a good amount of time. But whatever version is the live version, that they call it, is your published version. So whenever you are looking at the version history, this is a screenshot of the version history in the Power Apps portal. You'll see that version 4.16 is the live one. We can also see that Colby Beck was the one to modify it. There's no version notes here, but if there were, we could see what was in that version. And then you can see that there's a newer one that I have created. Now, if I wanted to make that one the current published live version, I simply select and click Publish at the top. If I want to go back to any of the previous versions, you can do so as well. You can just click on that one, and then it will have a button to restore that version. Now, when you restore an older version, it will create a new copy of it and put it at the top of this stack. And then that will be the latest iteration of that application. Something to note, if you are going to restore to a previous version of an application, it has to have been created within the last 6 months. Otherwise, you will be you won't be eligible to restore to it. One of the nice housekeeping things we like to mention is before you do any publishing, you want to make sure you double check what version you're working with and make sure that it's accurate. As you can see in some of these previous versions here, version 4.13, 4.12, and 4.11, we have good version notes. We encourage everybody to do that so that whenever you're reviewing these and making sure it is the appropriate version you want published, you have a quick reference on what was changed and how that would impact the end user. Okay, now that we've talked about sharing and accessing the app, we're going to dive into the different areas where you can embed Canvas apps. With embedding Canvas apps, sky is the limit, right? There's pretty much a place where you can embed it in every different technology. So what we're going to focus on today is, some of the centralized common Microsoft technologies that your organizations are probably using today. So first, we're going to talk about Teams. Teams is a great application as it's, the communication platform. And since most organizations are using this application for their communication, it becomes kind of a natural fit for you to embed other applications. Inside of Teams, you may have noticed, and if not, you can play around with this if you have Teams, but you have access to what's called the app catalog. Inside of your app catalog, there's a plethora of applications, some from Microsoft, third-party organizations. You can upload your own personal apps, and then you can also access organization apps, which are applications built by your organization and submitted to the catalog by your IT administrator. If you have your own personal application that you want to share with others, there is a button inside of Teams that just says submit your app. And when you go into there, what you're doing is you're basically just sending that application to whoever is your global admin or your IT administrator to approve it and add it into the app catalog. If one of your applications does get approved, there is a section inside of the app catalog labeled as organizational apps. So we like to talk about some of the scenarios for applications that we've built and embedded in our own and customers' Teams clients. The first is a time entry application that displays to the user their current tasks and allows that user to track their time towards it and create new tasks as needed. I will be showing a demonstration here shortly that will show you kind of a brief introduction to this application. And then another one that is more in demand currently and organizations have been asking about is a note-taking application that automatically captures the attendees of a meeting, allows you to take notes inside of that meeting, and then once you end the meeting, it automatically sends the notes in an email to all those who were in attendance. So when you're embedding an application in Teams, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. The first one I want to show you is how to embed it inside of a Teams channel, which will then allow all the users of that channel to access that application. So here I have navigated already to the channel I want to post in. And then I'm going to come to the top, click that add button. And this comes and opens up kind of a quick view of the app catalog. So I select my time entry application. I uncheck the post to channel because I don't necessarily want to notify everyone at this time about this application. But if you did, you could leave that checked and it would ping everybody and let them know that there's a new application in here. But now as it loads, you see I now have access to that application where I can start tracking my time, I can create tasks, and then anyone else inside of that channel can also do the same. This is a great option if you want to make it easy for everyone in a certain Office 365 group or in a certain Teams channel to have access to an application without having to download it and install it themselves into their own Teams application. The next way to do it is to embed your app as a personal app. I kind of chuckle as I'm going through this presentation, you're going to hear me say application a lot. So it gets kind of funny as you're talking about it. It's one of those common used words, but if I sound like I'm reiterating it too much, then bear with me. But when you embed your Canvas app as a personal app inside of Teams, what you're doing is you're giving yourself access to it. This is great if you have an application that is strictly for you or one maybe you want to test out before sharing it to a team or a channel. But in order to do so, On the left hand, you have your application bar where you can pin frequently used apps. When you click on that ellipses, it allows you to search for apps. Now, I click on more apps so you can see the app catalog, and I'll go ahead and pause here and just show you, as mentioned in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see that I have that upload a custom app button, and I also have that submit to app catalog. So whenever you're uploading, that's where you'd go. Same with if you want to submit your application to your IT. Continuing on, I'm going to actually embed one of Microsoft's applications and use Power Automate. So I simply click on that and hit open, and you'll notice that now it adds it to my app bar on the left-hand side, and then it has the application here inside of Teams, where I can now use the full power of Power Automate right here in my Teams application. Moving on, we're going to talk about Power BI. If your organization is using Power BI, you're probably using it to gain insights into your data and to understand better the data that is being stored in your system. And the great thing about Power BI is it allows you to do that in an easy visual way. But the purpose of using Power BI is to understand your data and take action on that data. So embedding Canvas apps into your application is a natural fit as well to help you go the next level and start making and taking action on that data. Canvas apps can also help you just get a better way of filtering and modifying the data. So if you're also looking at trying to understand it better, you can build Canvas apps to go in and filter your data, switch the different visualization types, so on and so forth. A couple of different use case scenarios for applications we've built and embedded into Power BI. First is a Canvas app embedded inside of a report that allowed a manager to see all of the workspaces inside their Power BI tenant. With this specific customer, they have a large organization that has lots of users using Power BI online service. And what was happening is lots of workspaces were being spun up. And a number of these workspaces weren't necessarily needed. So they wanted a quick and easy way to go into their Power BI report, see a list of all of these workspaces, filter them based on, last access date. And if based on the data they were seeing, if it didn't look like it was a necessary workspace, they had a Canvas app that allowed them to decommission that workspace. Another one that we have built is an amortization schedule app used by financial institutions that allows them to sit down with their customers and look at the loan impact for refinancing a certain loan. I'm going to show you a very simplified version of this application here shortly in my demonstration, but this has been a great one to show for the financial institution to show, hey, if you refinance with us, here's what your new payments are going to look like, here's what that saving is going to be, and all that can be done in a very quick and easy way. Another one is a Power BI report showing a manager all approval requests that have been sent to them. In this scenario, a manager had many people reporting to them, and they needed a quick and easy way to see a report of all those approvals and then be able to select them and have like a multi-line select where they can then approve all or reject the approval request. So as mentioned, I'm going to show you that amortization schedule. This is just a simplified version of it. And we're actually going to be embedding our Canvas app in the Power BI online service. You can also embed it in your Power BI application, the desktop app. It's a little bit of a different experience than the desktop app, but we find lots of organizations are using the Power BI service. So this tends to be a more common use case. So as you can see here, I have a couple of tiles here that's already part of my report, and now I'm going to embed that Canvas app that will allow me to populate data into those tiles. So I simply come up to Edit, click Add Tile, and then I pop in an iframe code. Now the iframe code, this is kind of a unique way to embed it. That iframe code allows you to just basically take that Power app and embed it, and with an iframe, you could put it in many other different services. But here, it's easy for you to just pop it in and start using it. So as I go now, I'm going to come in and say, I had a 5% interest rate on a 30-year mortgage of $300,000. And now I'm looking at getting a 3% with a 30-year, and let's say I paid off $15,000 of the loan. So 285,000. Now I can calculate and I can see what my current interest is, my new interest, the interest savings, my current and new payment, and see that really quickly and easily. So moving on, SharePoint is another one that lots of organizations use as the centralized location for documents, an intranet for you to be able to go in and have standardization documents and pages for different departments. Embedding apps in SharePoint is a great option because SharePoint provides a different approach to data storage. In SharePoint, you can create things called SharePoint lists, and you also have a document library. SharePoint lists are a great way to store your data if you require a NoSQL database or a non-relational database. SharePoint storage costs are much more affordable than the CRM licensing costs, and that's because the SharePoint lists are a NoSQL or non-relational database, as mentioned. If you do need a relational database, then Dynamics is a better fit. But if you're looking at and you have simple needs, this is a great option for you to store your data in those lists, to store your files in the document library, and you can build plenty of Canvas apps to allow you to enter in your data and really interact with it there. If you want to embed a Power App into a site, it does require that you be a site owner or someone with at least site edit permissions. And some examples of apps that we've built for SharePoint is a leave request app that sends an approval request to the user's manager. And if approved, it then puts that request onto the user's calendar and the team calendar. A simplified way of requesting time off and then providing visibility to everyone you're working with when that's going to be. And then another one, this is more for maybe the IT administrators and the managers. It was an equipment request app that sends an approval to the user's manager, and once approved, it then adds that item to an asset inventory list inside of SharePoint. With that app, there's also a section that allows the IT administrators to scan barcodes and pull up that item on the list. So it kind of serves the two purposes of making it easy for managers to approve requests, but also for the IT administrators to track that equipment and keep good inventory. So in this scenario, I have a page that's a manager tools page, and I'm going to try and embed two apps here, one for tracking my budget and one for tracking candidates that are applying for different positions within the organization. So I'm going to have my apps be embedded right in between the title and the block of content there. So I come in, I edit my application, I click on that Microsoft Power Apps web part, and then it's asking for the app web link, which can be found in the details section of the app in the make.powerapps portal. Once I pop that in there, it's going to load. I also like to put the border on just because it looks a little bit prettier. And then I'm going to do the same for my other application, which I already have this link copied elsewhere, so I'll just grab it and throw it in. And then I'll turn on that border just to make it look nice. Now, as I click out, I simply republish the page, and I have access to my Canvas apps here in this page and can start looking through my budget, tracking it, and then I can come over here to the candidate reviews and go into the different departments. Let's say I just interviewed Bethany and I liked her. I can come in here and see the other interviewers, how they felt, and then I can also put my own review in. I thought Bethany did a great job. I thought she was knowledgeable, so I'm going to put that I think we should hire her. And heck, I'm the manager, so I'll just say we will hire. How about that? Okay. Another scenario is the Dynamics 365. If you're already using Dynamics 365, then you may know, or at least are starting to know, that it's chock full of many powerful features. There's plenty of opportunities to further extend on that platform by embedding Canvas apps. Things you could do is, create automation, create a simpler way to query the data. A lot of times customers will come to us and ask us to build Canvas apps just to simplify something that the Dynamics platform already does. So not only is there opportunities to build new features, but there's also opportunities to simplify the user experience and, maybe create a Canvas app that's more customized to the way that you would like the Dynamics platform to look. In our scenario, I'm going to show you how to embed an app on a form inside of Dynamics. This is the recommended way, because when you embed a Canvas app on a form, you get to tie it to a required field on that form, which then allows the Canvas app to receive the context of that form, or the record and all of its data that you're currently looking at. Some scenarios that we've had for building apps embedded in Dynamics 365. First was a visualization of first in and first out tasks with a Power BI report embedded inside of the Canvas app. It also allowed them to visualize the tasks and performance all in one pane. And then another is a customized grid with icons, buttons, and visualizations. In this scenario, we weren't creating any new features. We were just creating a better and easier way for the users to interact with that data in a way that made sense to them, and they were able to kind of dictate how it looked. So back to my scenario here, what I'm going to show you is a Canvas app that I built that allows you to quickly take one contact and migrate them to a different account. So let's say here we have myself as a contact. Let's say I get a new job and I leave A Datum Corp, and I want to have that updated, or the sales organization that's managing my contact wants to quickly update that. The app I'm going to show you will do that. It will change the account, it will update the email, and it will update the address that's tied to the account. Now, in this scenario, we're going to make some assumptions that the email structure for both accounts is the same, namely the first name at the company's domain name. But here I go. I'm going to want to embed over to the right side of that application. So I'm going to navigate over to the make.powerapps portal. Then I'm going to make sure I'm in the correct environment. Couldn't tell you how many times I've built something in the wrong environment only to go and find out that it wasn't where I wanted it to be. So double check your environment. Then you're going to go into the solution that you're currently working in. Since this is a demonstration and we're in a sandbox environment, I'll go to the default environment, or the default solution. And then once this loads, I'm going to go and find the table that holds the form that I would like to embed my application in. So since this is going to be affecting the contact, I will open up the contact table. I will click into the form, and then I will select the contact form that I'm going to embed it on. Now that this is loaded, I'm going to go in and grab a required field. As mentioned before, you need to have it tied to a required field. If you don't, then there's a high chance that the field you tied your application to doesn't get filled out, which will break that Canvas app and it won't allow it to populate. So I dropped my last name column because I know that's required in over here. I'm going to hide the label because I don't want that to show up. And then I'm going to add the Canvas app component. Now it's going to ask me for a couple of things. The entity name, I'm just going to bind this to the last name row that we have selected. The app name I'm going to grab from the make.powerapps portal, and that's going to be the name of the application. And then the app ID is also going to be in the details section of the portal for that app, which I will embed here. Then you choose where you want this to show. I only want it on the web. And then I hit done. It's going to give me a quick preview of the application there. I'm going to save the form. And then once I save it, you also want to make sure that you publish. Similar principle as we mentioned earlier, you can save things, but until they're published, not all of the users will have access to them. So after I've saved it, I'm going to publish. And this takes a little bit, so I'll kind of skip through here. Publishing. And right here now, if I go back to the form and I refresh, I now will have access to that Canvas app right there inside of my Dynamics CRM. And just to show you how it works, right, we're going to migrate me from A Datum Corp to AdventureWorks Corporation. Click Migrate, and the application is going to do its work, tell me it was good. And then when I refresh the page, you'll notice my account is now associated to the AdventureWorks Corporation. My email has been updated, and the address is now reflecting the address on the account. So we have an honorable mention here, and the reason we're doing an honorable mention on embedding in Outlook is it doesn't adhere to the low code, no code mentality. That being, in order to embed a Canvas app into Outlook currently, you have to build an Outlook add-in, which requires coding in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and XML. So creating an Outlook add-in is the only way currently to embed a Canvas app. And once you have that Outlook add-in created, you can then embed that iframe inside the body of that HTML code. So we're giving it an honorable mention because it's not as simple as the other ones, because it does require you to do some coding, but it is still valuable because if you're comfortable doing some coding, and if you don't mind following a couple of documentations, or maybe you have the expertise where you can just build it yourself, you can then embed that Outlook application, and then you can increase the ability to do things in Outlook. Some scenarios for apps that we could embed in Outlook. This one's a personal favorite of mine. A Canvas app that sorts through all those pesky emails and searches and finds all the ones that have an unsubscribe link, and then unsubscribes you from those emails of your choosing. If that unsubscribe link requires you to fill anything out, then it pops open that form inside of the Canvas app for you to fill it out, hit submit, and then you can unsubscribe. Like I mentioned, that's a fun one, especially if you're getting hit with too many emails, and especially some scammer things. Great to just quickly unsubscribe. Another one is an app that sets a reminder and notifies you when that reminder comes back up to follow up on a certain email. So if you're getting, hundreds of emails a day and you can't keep it straight, it's nice to have a quick application that says, oh, this is an important one. Remind me in, a day or two, or even you can set it up to remind me in 30 minutes, remind me in an hour, and then you'll get a notification. That notification could be a notification to your teams. It could be another a notification inside of your email. Whatever you want to set up, the notification can be quite pesky if you need it to be. Lastly, the thing that everybody asks us, and this tends to be the area where we spend a good chunk of our initial time with discussing projects with clients, licensing considerations. So when you're trying to build Power Apps or leverage the Power Platform, there's a couple of things that we need to kind of go over as far as questions to help figure out what license is best for you. First, you want to consider if your organization already uses any Office 365 or Dynamics 365 licenses. These licenses tend to have a higher subscription cost, but that's because they come with the Power Apps and the Power Automate license included inside of them. And they give you access to plenty of other things. When you're using these licenses, there are limitations to your Power Apps and Power Automate access, but those limitations still allow you to do quite a lot, and most people wouldn't ever really run into those limitations unless you're a developer building, hundreds of flows every year. Then you might notice those limitations. But for most users, the Dynamics 365 and the Office 365 Power Platform add-ins will fit your needs. Now, if you don't have either of those two types of licenses, then the next question is, okay, how do you want to use Power Apps? Are you just trying to build one or two apps and that's it? If so, the Power Apps per app application is a much more affordable option. The way that this license works, it's $5 per user, and it grants that user access to one application. And that application can be a Canvas app, it can be a model-driven app, it could be a portal, which we haven't even talked about portals, but it gives that user access to one application. With that application, there's also some implications on the storage that you have access to. With a Power Apps per app license, you get an added 50 megabytes of database capacity and 400 megabytes of file capacity per license. So when you're building Power Apps or Power Automates, anything on the Power Platform, it utilizes Dataverse storage. So each of those licenses gives you a little bit more storage so you can build and continue doing what you're doing. Now the Power App per user license, this one you would want to get if you're planning on building a lot of different Power Apps and you want to enable your users to kind of build at their own will. There's no limitations to how many applications a user can create. And this one comes in at $20 per month. And this one is great if you're just going to let them go free and let them play around with the Power Apps interface. With this one, you also get 250 megabytes of database capacity and 2 gigabytes of file capacity per license that will be applied to that Dataverse tenant. A new application license that is coming out is this Power Apps Pay-as-you-go plan. And what this does is it's a license that allows you to build an application, and then you are only going to pay that licensing cost anytime a user accesses that application. So let's say I build an application and then I publish it and it sits dormant for 6 months. Well, for those 6 months, I'm not going to incur any costs. But on the 7th month, let's say 2 users start using that application. Well, then each of those users is going to incur that $10 a month licensing cost. So this is great as a flexible option for organizations that want to build applications and then let people kind of use them on their own time and not have to always be paying for those licenses. So if you're as excited as I am, which maybe not everyone is as excited as I am about the Power Platform, but if you are, you're probably at the edge of your seat asking, how do I get started today? Well, we've got a couple of suggestions for you. First, we have a Power Apps Sherpa program. What a Sherpa program is basically we act as a Sherpa to you to help you get to the summit of this metaphorical mountain. We're going to help guide you through this process of building Power Apps and deploying them in your organization. This is a program that is really helpful. We have lots of organizations using them for different things. We don't have it just for the Power Apps. We also have them for all the other Microsoft technologies. But the Power Apps one is great if you want to get started in this area. Another thing you can do is review the free training documentation and the learning paths published on Microsoft's website. They have a whole section, I believe it's learn.microsoft.com, where you can go through these courses designed to teach you how to build on this platform. And then the third thing is just do it. Just get in there and start building apps today and learn as you go. Most of the people that I know, myself included, we took a mixture of these different 3 suggestions, and that's how we gained our expertise. A lot of the stuff that I learned was through the documentation on Microsoft and just getting in there and doing it and then building those applications. So either way, if you need help, that Sherpa program is a great way to kind of fast track that, or just dive in and start doing it with the documentation that Microsoft already provides.